If you're in a long-term relationship, specifically, really we're talking about marriage here, you're going to have to deal with the problem of in-laws. And one of the biggest problems I see with in-laws is passive aggression. Passive aggression is something that a lot of people misunderstand. We use it colloquially when we find someone being kind of snobby or kind of a little curt. We'll say, oh, he's passive aggressive, but a lot of people don't really know what it means. And I find that it's actually pretty prevalent inside of in-law relationships. So let's go over how to deal with it, what it is, how to recognize it, how to solve it, so that you hopefully don't have to fall victim to in-laws who are acting passive aggressively to you or to your spouse. So the first step is really recognizing passive aggressive behavior. To me, the one word to think of when it comes to passive aggression is sabotage. Okay, so if there are 4 different communication styles, there's assertive, aggressive, passive, and then what we're talking about, passive aggressive. And sometimes it's helpful to understand the difference. So assertive means I'm open to hearing feedback, but I hold my line, firmly, knowing what I want, but I'm not closed-minded. That's kind of a quick summary of assertion, right? So it comes off as strong. It's kind of the gold standard of what most people should shoot for in most situations. Then you have aggressive, which is that tyrant kind of thing where it's my way or the highway. I don't care. If you think I'm wrong, I know I'm right. This is it. Bend to my will. That's aggression. Passive is the other way, completely the other way, which is whatever you want. I don't care. It's fine. Passive aggression is when on the surface you are appearing passive. Whatever you want, no big deal, it's fine. And then behind the person's back, there's an action or words that are said to somebody else, which in and of itself is an action, that actually sabotage some part or the entire relationship. So there's the aggressive action that's hiding under the facade of a passive communication style. So if you're dealing with in-laws, it's like, oh, everything's fine. Don't worry about it. But then behind your back, they call your spouse and say, why are you still with this person? They clearly don't have your best intentions. And then you see them again. Oh, it's so wonderful to see you. Oh, I hear you guys are going on vacation. You must be so excited. And then they talk behind your back. How are they going on vacation? They don't have any money. They still owe us money. That guy's a piece of crap. That woman's a piece of crap. There's the passive aggression. And sometimes it's just words they say. Sometimes it's actions. They might post something on Facebook. They might not invite you to a family function. They might do other things in terms of if you have shared businesses together, there's a lot of things that come up. So recognizing passive aggression is your first step. You want to really make sure that it is passive aggression, not just regular old aggression where they're being rude and confrontational every time they see you, because that requires a different stance. So the impact of passive aggression on family dynamics is pretty substantial, because part of the nature of passive aggression is this two-faced nature of being passive in front of the person and not asserting yourself, not being aggressive, bending to the person's will, and then behind the back doing something that's diametrically opposed to that sentiment. And so if you're thinking of it in terms of family dynamics where you have in-laws, it really erodes any sense of trust in the relationship because you don't know what their true intentions are. So how do we deal with this? Okay, hopefully you're getting a sense of what passive aggression is and why it's so detrimental to the relationship. Now, how do we actually deal with it? So the first step is really to set boundaries. You want to set clear and assertive boundaries really with everyone in your relationship. I mean, that's helpful. It's helpful and healthy, not just for the person in the relationship, but for you. You need to know where the lines are and when someone crosses it, when that means the end of the relationship. And you need to communicate those boundaries effectively without escalating conflicts. So let's try to make an actual example so you can wrap your head around how you would set boundaries and really kind of make it clear without escalating. Let's say you had a new baby. I'm going to take the assumption that I'm talking, let's say, to a man, right? So you and your new wife have a new baby, your first child, and the parents tell you, oh, you're a great parent, you're a great parent, but then they feed the baby when you're not looking. Like, he doesn't really know what he's doing. I'm going to feed the baby. Or they give them sweets. You know, if it's a toddler, they give them sweets and different things. And so there's this, yeah, we're good. So that's essentially lying through the passive nature. And then the aggressive nature is giving the kid something that's not healthy for them or not in your parenting plan. Very common situation, especially with grandparents who think they're doing the right thing, right? So how do you set that boundary? So you say, listen, I'm not accusing you of doing anything poorly or having anybody's bad intentions in mind. But the way we decide to raise our kid is up to us as parents. And I saw there was some candy wrappers, or I noticed that instead of letting her try to sleep through the night, you've picked her up and fed her, and that's not really working for us. So, if it's too hard for you not to cave and, be part of that parenting structure we're trying to upkeep, that's totally fine. We'll have to get a babysitter, or we'll have to find another way you guys can have a relationship, but you are not going to be able to watch the baby or the child at those times without supervision or something like that, right? And essentially what you're doing, and this goes to setting all healthy boundaries, is you're saying if the boundary is broken, a relationship will be either eliminated or withdrawn. That's really the only defense you have. The only thing you can do when a boundary is broken is kill or minimize the relationship in some way. If someone breaks a boundary or crosses a boundary, a border that you've set up, a clear line in the sand, you can't just yell and scream at them, right? Because now you're crossing pretty much everyone's boundary. Nobody wants to be belittled. What you can do is take yourself out of the relationship. Sometimes you take yourself out of the relationship just for 5 minutes to take a breather, and that's enough. That's what a timeout is for most kids, right? That's a boundary crossing with a relationship kind of consequence. Sometimes you take yourself out of the relationship permanently. That's divorce, that's cutting family off, and there's everything in between. So you really have to present, like, if you're going to do this, you really can't see our child without us present. I'm not saying you can't, be part of their lives, but we need to be able to trust you. And if we can't, then, you're more than welcome to be part of their lives, but we're going to have to be around. And no grandparent wants to hear that. Usually they want to feel that they have autonomy to be with their grandkids and so on. Now, there is a drawback for you, right? The drawback is you have to be willing to follow through on this. So if you have no other babysitter potential and you can't afford one and you really need someone to watch your kids, maybe those boundaries need to be rethought, right? But in most cases, if you can follow through on the threat, then you're doing just fine, because that is an effective boundary that you're drawing. Okay, so let's talk about effective communication strategies. When you're setting the boundary, when the boundaries are crossed, how do you actually talk to your in-laws to get them to know this is where you stand without it escalating the conflict, without it creating unnecessary emotional damage? Some tips here on how you can actually do this effectively. I always recommend using what we call in counseling or in therapy, I statements. It's impossible to argue with someone when they're talking about how they feel, because the only thing that decides how a person feels is themselves. If I say I'm sad and the other person says, no, you're not, they're the crazy one. So it's important to talk about your own feelings when something is either, crossed, when a boundary is crossed, or when you're setting one up. I feel very strongly that my kid only eats healthy food. It's really important to me. I know it's not a value everyone shares, and some people think that kids need sugary snacks once in a while as rewards. I disagree with it. And so you keep talking about right? If a boundary is crossed, you have to say, I feel betrayed. I feel dismissed. I feel lonely. I feel hurt, right? You talk about the negative emotions you have using I statements, not you told me you wouldn't do this and you did it, because there's a very accusatory tone. And whenever you're dealing with conflict resolution and communication strategies, you want to talk about where you stand, right? And then you let them talk and you practice, again, another therapeutic term, active listening. You literally sit there and you try and take in as much as you can. You do not interrupt. You hear them out. You're really curious. You're playing the I'm curious game. Why do you feel this way? That's so interesting. Without inserting any of your own beliefs at all. You are only there on a fact-finding mission when you're active listening. You're just, okay, tell me more. And when did you come up with this? And oh, that's so interesting. Really, it serves two purposes. One, if you can train your brain to be in this curious mindset, you're going to do better in general, because being curious, you're going to actually find more information than when you're closed off. And then the second thing is it creates a spirit of teamwork, of empathy. When someone feels fully heard, they're more willing to bend, they're more willing to find room to compromise. So those are the two effective communication strategies you should be focusing on: the I statements and the active listening. One is internalized, one is externalized at the interpersonal play. Let's talk about conflict resolution techniques. I kind of touched upon it, before. The first thing to keep in mind is stay calm and stay rational. If you feel like you're going to explode, it is not the right time to talk to them. You need to learn to step away and say, hey, I'm still really upset about it. It's not fair to you or to me to talk about it while I'm still upset. Let's put it aside. Know that we're still family. I'm upset about something, but we'll get through it, right? That attitude goes a long way. And then during your active listening, when you talk to them, that's part of the communication strategies we talked about. You want to find common ground. Common ground breeds empathy, breeds compromise. So to take it to an extreme, let's use the candy example versus healthy food. Someone says, you believe that kids should have candy once in a while. I believe they shouldn't. I think we can both agree that if we give them candy in the morning before breakfast, that's bad for their teeth and bad for their hygiene. And also it's bad for not just their physical health, but really mentally understanding that they could just have whatever they want. Would we agree on that? And you get them to play what I call, again, the yes game. I look at it as a game. How many times can I get them to say yes? The more you say yes, the more there is a feeling of compromise, a feeling of common ground. So you say, I think we could both agree that if they had candy before breakfast, it's bad for them as a child. Would you agree with that? Yes. Okay. And I think having candy every day, right, is also bad. Would you agree on that? Yes. Okay. And I would also say that if you gave them a whole bowl of candy, that's also not healthy, right? Yes. So now you have 3 yeses. Okay. Now you believe they should get some candy, right? And I'm trying to go completely sugar-free. So my boundary is more clearly defined, right? The clear definition here is I want 0. And both of us agree that they shouldn't have it in the morning, they shouldn't have a whole bowl, and they shouldn't have it every single day. So what I need to do is figure out, where do you feel that comfortable line is? Where is like enough? And oftentimes people don't know. And so getting them to talk about, well, that's interesting. I think after because the truth is they're not holding to any boundaries in this particular case. So if you say, look, if you want to reward them with candy because you're grandma, maybe I can look the other way, because they should have a special relationship with you and they can have one piece of candy, but can we agree on what kind of candy it is? Maybe there's a sugar-free candy. Maybe if you're going completely candy-free, maybe it's something like raisins it depends on what your kids actually like. It could be a fruit, right? Or a popsicle that's made from fruit juice. Maybe you can even help make them. But understanding where that compromise is by getting to the yes game. Find the common ground. So those are the conflict resolution techniques I would work on. I would work on staying calm and rational, looking for common ground, and playing the yes game. And then finally, if you're having problems with this, there's no shame in seeking support. Other friends and family members who've been through this and know techniques and systems that work for them, learn from them, talk to them, share with them, see what they can share. If your in-laws have other kids who are married, see how they handle the passive aggression. It's not difficult to say, hey, I'm newer to the family. You've been at this a while. have you ever dealt with this, this kind of passive aggression where they say one thing and then they do the other? You'll be pleasantly surprised where, your brother-in-law might say, oh yeah, that still happens. How do you deal with it? I just look the other way and realize life is short. Or, I had this long talk with them and we see eye to eye now. Whatever it is, it might be revealing to you. The other thing you could do is work with a couples counselor, a marriage counselor, or even your own personal therapist or a coach. I might have availability in my schedule. You're always welcome to call me or reach out to me. But asking for help when you need help is a sign of strength, not weakness. And then the last thing is self-care, right? Learn how to manage your stress. Learn how to manage your own emotional well-being so that when this passive aggression happens, you don't explode. You are responsible for being an adult and maintaining your own emotional regulation systems, right? You need to learn how you regulate, how you calm down. I've had clients in my own practice who have been diagnosed as bipolar and have been off medication for over a decade successfully because they are stringent about monitoring their emotion, knowing their triggers, and when they need a break, take a day off to go to the spa, they're diligent about actually honoring what they need to regulate. And as their life gets more complicated, they have more responsibilities, and they have less time to self-regulate, they learn how to adjust. So learning how you can calm down and regulate your own stress is going to be crucial for you in succeeding with things like this. I hope you found this useful. My name is Dr. Jon Dabach, and I will see you next time.